Lab Confession presents stories so real, they redefine reality. Don't just watch, immerse yourself. This is the truth, unfiltered. On the sleek console table in our minimalist hallway sat a sophisticated designer tote bag. It wasn't tucked away in Coraline's walk-in closet, where her accessories usually resided. It was centered, almost ceremonially, a stark black silhouette against the polished wood. I stared at it for an unnerving 3 minutes, my stomach knotting, before my fingers, clumsy with apprehension, reached for the zipper. Inside, nestled amongst unfamiliar silk lining, was a vibrant sapphire cocktail dress I'd never seen, a pair of glittering heels with traces of urban grit on their soles, and a plain cream envelope. No name, no address. I wish I could claim a moral compass that would have stopped me, but that night, all sense of decorum evaporated. My fingers, cold and trembling, like they already knew the devastation they were about to unleash, tore open the seal. Inside was a digital confirmation from a high-end wellness retreat, 40 miles outside the city, one exclusive suite, one night, designated for 2 guests. No names, just the last 4 digits of a credit card, 1137. It wasn't Coraline's card. It certainly wasn't mine. The air in our perfectly appointed living space felt impossibly heavy, thick with unspoken truths. Our cat, Luna, usually a creature of calm, stirred restlessly on the sun-drenched sill. The world I'd known for 2 decades had begun to fracture beneath my feet. Coraline walked in mere minutes later, her phone clutched in one hand, earbuds in, humming a bright, effortless tune. She froze when her gaze landed on the confirmation slip in my hand. Her eyes didn't widen in shock. There was no gasp of surprise. She simply blinked, a practiced, almost bored expression, as if she'd rehearsed this moment countless times and still hadn't settled on her preferred act. Feigned innocence or defiant admission. Her voice, when it came, was chillingly calm. You weren't supposed to see that yet. Yet. As if betrayal had a perfectly timed reveal. As if the demolition of our life was just a phase in a carefully orchestrated plan. I managed one question, the words raw and brittle. How long? She exhaled slowly through her nose, a sound of profound irritation, as though I were the inconvenient interruption. Ethan, don't be dramatic. That was the moment, the final undeniable click. Not because she cheated, not even because she'd lied, but because my pain, my raw, sudden agony, wasn't even worth the courtesy of a genuine response. The tote, the dress, the chilling indifference, it was all a performance, a grand unveiling. And somehow, I, Ethan Vance, had become the last person to realize I was living in a play I hadn't auditioned for. And trust me, this was just the opening curtain. I didn't sleep that night. Not from rage, though that corrosive emotion simmered, but from a profound sense of disorientation. It was as if I'd woken up in someone else's life. I sat at the kitchen island, Coraline's untouched designer tote bag still on the console, a silent, mocking monument. She'd gone upstairs without a word. No offer to talk, no tears, no confession. Just the chilling evidence and the hollow echo of my own disbelief. Around 2:40 a.m., a desperate need for motion propelled me towards the refrigerator. Not hunger, but a gnawing urge to occupy my hands. Leftovers from the gourmet pasta dish I'd meticulously prepared 2 nights prior sat there. She had claimed it was too rich. Now I understood she probably hadn't even tasted it. She must have been texting him beneath the polished dining table while I recounted mundane details of property taxes and upcoming home repairs. The cruel, absurd normalcy of it all, while my life was quietly dismantled around me. At 6:12 a.m., she descended the stairs, clad in the exquisite silk scarf I'd bought her from that exclusive boutique for our anniversary 2 years ago. The audacity of her composure was breathtaking. She even offered, "Coffee, Ethan?" I could only stare. "Why did you leave the bag there?" I managed, a faint hope flickering that it was a mistake, a desperate cry for help, but she didn't falter. "Because I was tired of hiding," she said, taking a sip from her artisanal ceramic mug as if discussing weekend plans. "You would have found out eventually. This just made it easier. A sound, more a guttural wheeze than a laugh, tore from my chest. Something inside me had snapped. Easier for you? Her eyes finally met mine, cool and appraising. Easier than pretending to be happy. You haven't truly touched me in months, Ethan. You drift through this house like a ghost. I needed to feel alive again. I wanted to scream, not because her words were entirely false, but because a terrifying part of me recognized a twisted grain of truth. I had become a routine, a shadow, a walking reminder of bills and ill-timed responsibilities. But that, I raged internally, did not grant her the right to shred 20 years into a single, silent night. I left the house for the first time that morning without our usual strained goodbye. I drove aimlessly, yet with a burgeoning purpose, past familiar storefronts and bustling cafes, past all the landmarks that had once defined our life. And in that desolate journey, a decision solidified. I wouldn't beg, but I would unearth the identity of her lover, because if she thought this saga would conclude quietly, she fundamentally misunderstood Ethan Vance. I skipped work entirely, drifting through the city, each familiar intersection a fresh wound. Every place we'd built memories felt drained of color. I eventually found myself parked behind the old university quad, staring blankly at the spiderweb crack in my windshield, a repair I'd endlessly postponed. Had I deliberately missed every glaring sign? Was I too afraid to scrutinize the life we'd carefully constructed? Or did I simply refuse to believe she was capable of such deception? What I'm about to show you is a banned truth in some circles. When I finally unlocked my phone, it wasn't to call her. It was to check our joint bank account. She'd forgotten I still had transaction alerts active. 2 nights prior, a hefty charge to an exclusive art gallery opening she'd always dismissed as too pretentious. The receipt didn't name names, but the reservation number, a sequence of digits, was a lifeline. I copied it, accessed the gallery's online portal, and feigned a cancellation. The confirmation email arrived, displaying the original booking name in the subject line. Gideon Landry, not a name in our limited social orbit, and certainly not one I wanted to Google. But what choice did I have? He wasn't just a fleeting encounter. Gideon Landry was a regional director at the same high-profile medical supplier where Coraline worked. The kind of man who delivered keynote speeches at industry conferences, whose confident pronouncements graced trade magazines. I recognized his face instantly. A year ago, a photo of them had been in her work email signature, his hand resting casually on her shoulder. At the time, I'd remarked it looked a bit too cozy. She'd rolled her eyes, calling me paranoid. I wasn't paranoid. I was being played. I locked my phone and sat there for hours, suspended in a silent void. No tears yet, but something far more insidious. Shame. Shame that I had become the last to know, while she smiled in my face, meticulously constructing a parallel life. When I returned home that evening, she was absent. Her luxury sedan was gone again. The designer tote from the night before was now conspicuously absent from the console, perhaps tucked away in her closet. The confirmation, the dress, the evidence, all vanished. She'd performed a superficial cleanup, but I wasn't ready for a confrontation. Not yet. I wanted her to believe I was still oblivious, still navigating the dark. Because when someone betrays you with such effortless grace, you stop screaming and start listening. And I had a plan. If she could keep secrets, so could I. She had no idea I knew his name. No clue I was watching, listening, analyzing every shifted tone, every flimsy excuse. I didn't need to physically follow her. I had something far more potent. Quiet access to our shared smart home hub. We'd set it up years ago for syncing schedules, security camera feeds, and smart device controls. She must have completely forgotten its existence, or perhaps assumed I was too technologically inept to ever revisit it. She was wrong. Not anymore. Late Thursday night, the only light in the study came from the dim glow of my laptop. I logged in, navigating to the archived photo folder she used for professional events. Mostly mundane conference slides, stiff group photos, the kind of corporate filler no one ever truly scrutinizes. But then, buried within, a photo that stopped my breath. It was a screenshot of a video call background. Her face wasn't visible, but I could make out her hand holding the phone. On the plush velvet sofa behind her, a man's tailored blazer. I zoomed in. There it was, embroidered elegantly on the cuff. GL. The timestamp was from a week ago, the same night she claimed to be working late, training new staff. In 7 days, your life will change. I stared at the image until my eyes burned. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the chilling ease of it, the casual nature. Like infidelity had become as routine as her morning yoga. I didn't sleep. I didn't even lie down. I brewed coffee at 2 a.m. and sat at the kitchen island, a living statue. My mind replayed all the minor concessions I'd made over the years, all the little pieces of myself I'd given up, convinced I was fortifying something real and lasting. She descended the stairs the next morning as if it were any other day. She pressed a dry kiss to my cheek, mentioned she might be late, and then paused almost imperceptibly, as if sensing a shift in the air. I forced a smile, letting her believe I was still adrift in ignorance. That day, I booked a consultation with a financial advisor. Not because I was ready to file, not yet, but because I needed to understand the landscape. My rights, what assets she couldn't conceal. The meeting was sterile, clinical, purely transactional, and precisely what I needed. That night, she left again. Executive strategy session with a coworker, she'd said. I didn't ask who, didn't flinch. I simply nodded. The moment the door clicked shut behind her, I opened my laptop and accessed our shared smart home calendar. She'd meticulously deleted the incriminating old entries. But one crucial detail she'd overlooked: deleted items could be restored. I clicked Restore All. Within seconds, a torrent of events reappeared, discreetly coded under vague labels like Project Discussions and Client Appreciation. Every single one confirmed my suspicions. Tonight she returned, her scent subtly different, carrying the faint, sweet perfume of someone else's company. This wasn't a singular lapse. This was a deliberate pattern, a meticulously constructed timeline, and I was done watching it unfold from the sidelines. I didn't crave revenge, but I wanted the truth to exact a price. Friday hung heavy, a suffocating fog I couldn't shake. The silence in the house was amplified. The rhythmic tick of the grandfather clock, the soft hum of the refrigerator, even the quiet sound of my own breathing, all pressed in, stark reminders of something putrid beneath the surface. She said little that morning, poured her coffee, scrolled through her phone, and departed without her customary kiss. I wondered if she sensed it, that I hadn't been asleep as she assumed. Or perhaps, and this thought was a colder sting, she simply didn't care anymore. At 6:37 p.m., a text, "Dinner might run late, don't wait up." Except there was no dinner. I knew because I'd discreetly messaged the mutual friend she claimed to be meeting, feigning a question about a community project. I'd stored her contact number months ago from a group chat. "Sure, Ethan," the friend replied. "I'm just home tonight, catching up on a new series. Slow Friday." That was all I needed. I thanked her, severing the connection before the tremor in my voice could give me away. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I simply stood in the kitchen, the phone cold in my hand, gazing out the window at our immaculately manicured backyard, where the porch light flickered, struggling to maintain its glow. And then a decision crystallized. Not one I announced, not yet. A quiet, private shift. I retrieved the small, leather-bound notebook we kept in the kitchen drawer, the one she used for grocery lists and I for jotting down home repairs. I turned to a fresh page, scrawled the date at the top, and began to list everything I'd unearthed. Digital confirmations, encrypted chat logs, timestamped lies, screenshots, financial transactions. Every piece of evidence. Not for a battle, for a goodbye she wouldn't see coming. She returned at 11:08 p.m. From the shadows of the hallway, I watched as she meticulously placed her heels by the door and opened the fridge, utterly oblivious. She didn't check if I was awake. She didn't hesitate. I considered confronting her, marching in and forcing her to utter his name, but I didn't. Instead, I stepped outside. I stood barefoot on the cool flagstones of the patio, letting the sharp night air sting my skin. I needed to feel something real, something unadulterated. No lies, no quiet gaslighting, just the raw sensation of being awake and alive. I realized then that the woman I'd been married to for 20 years had become a stranger. Or perhaps she always was, and I had simply loved a version of her I'd constructed in my mind. Either way, that night didn't shatter me. It sharpened me, because I wasn't just compiling evidence anymore. I was preparing for an exit, and when it was done, she would feel it. Saturday afternoon, while she was out running errands, I entered her dedicated home office wearing thin gloves. Not for drama, but because the thought of touching her sleek tablet, a digital vault of her double life, with bare hands made my skin crawl. She hadn't changed the password in years. When I accessed it, a bitter laugh almost escaped. Her desktop background was still a photo of us from a camping trip 8 years ago. Her smile was so utterly convincing. You'd never guess her loyalty had already begun to unravel. I wasn't hunting for recent messages. She was too clever for that now. I wanted files, the kind she probably assumed wouldn't sync to her cloud. And there it was, nestled in an archived voice memos folder, labeled Project Updates Q2, innocuous enough. But when I pressed play, her voice, soft and intimate, blended with his. She laughed, not a polite professional laugh, but a low, throaty one. She whispered something I couldn't fully decipher. Then I heard him say, "It's only a matter of time before you leave him, right?" Her reply wasn't immediate. Then, "Soon. He's like wallpaper, Gideon. You stop noticing it after a while." My hand froze over the trackpad. Wallpaper. That's what I had become. Not even furniture, not even a person. Just background. Something remembered only when it started to peel. I downloaded the audio file, encrypted it, and saved it to a hidden flash drive. Then I copied her browser history, screenshots of relevant messages, and the compiled credit card transactions. I wasn't just preparing to leave. I was constructing an irrefutable foundation for why I was walking away. Not for her, not for the lawyers, but for myself. That evening, she returned with sushi takeout and a smile that made my stomach clench. "I got our favorites," she said, as if her last 24 hours hadn't included whispering dismissive words about me to a man who saw me as a bland paint color. I helped her set the table. I poured sake while she arranged the nigiri. The casual domesticity felt surreal, a dead marriage performing a semblance of life. But I maintained the facade. I chuckled when expected. I even inquired about her day because I needed her to believe everything was fine. I had already booked a boutique Airbnb for myself under a fictitious name, paid in cash for one night, just to clear my head before the inevitable storm. But I wasn't merely clearing my head. I had packed a second bag containing everything I needed to walk out of this house and never return. Sunday morning dawned, shrouded in a profound stillness. She was still asleep when I slipped out of bed. I stood for a moment, watching her breathe. Not out of affection, but a morbid curiosity, wanting to imprint the image of indifference onto my memory. It was astonishing how someone could appear so serene after setting fire to a life we'd spent 2 decades building. I moved quietly through the house, retrieving the bag I'd hidden beneath the laundry pile 2 days earlier. I left no note, no accusations, just silence. The Airbnb I'd chosen was unremarkable, a cozy loft with exposed brick in an older, quiet neighborhood. Anonymous. That was the point. I didn't seek comfort. I sought absence. I wanted to vanish from the version of myself she had unknowingly trained me to be. The man who always forgave, always adapted, always stayed in the kitchen while she rewrote the rules. Inside the loft, I opened my laptop. I pulled up the folder labeled, "If She Ever Asked Why." I reviewed every screenshot, every receipt, every voice memo. Not out of obsession, but for closure. I needed to confirm that the pain wasn't imagined, that I hadn't lost my mind, that I hadn't failed her. She had simply outgrown pretending. At 3:14 p.m., I sent a single terse message to my financial advisor via a secure app. Subject line, "Initiated." Attached were the compiled files along with a signed statement I'd prepared the previous night. Nothing dramatic, No florid prose, just the stark truth. That same afternoon, I did something I once thought unimaginable. I blocked her number, not from hatred, but because I no longer recognized the voice on the other end. Every word that once held meaning now felt like static. The thought of hearing her say my name made my skin crawl. By evening, I was strolling down an unfamiliar street, eating a simple sandwich by a quiet river, contemplating what life might be like without being someone's husband. It was terrifying, yet it also felt clean, untouched, like fresh air after years of breathing through a filter I hadn't known existed. She didn't call that night. She didn't text. Perhaps she believed I was sulking in the garage, as I often had. Perhaps she assumed I would capitulate, as I always had. Or perhaps, just perhaps, she already sensed I was gone. But the true twist wasn't that I left. It was that I told no one where I went, not even our daughter. Because this wasn't just about escape. It was about erasure. I didn't want to burn the bridge. I wanted to make it as if I was never standing on it to begin with. 3 weeks passed before she finally broke. It arrived not as a voicemail, but a frantic volley of messages across multiple platforms, her voice trembling, demanding to know my whereabouts, insisting we needed to talk, claiming she was finally ready to be honest. But the problem with honesty is, once it arrives late, it feels indistinguishable from manipulation. I didn't listen to the full messages. I didn't need to. I already knew everything I needed. I had moved into a small, cozy loft by then, with exposed brick walls and windows that rattled gently in the wind. But it was mine. The first night I slept there, I lay on the floor in profound silence. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was bracing for an emotional ambush. I simply existed. Our daughter eventually reached out. I was honest with her, carefully filtered, without poison. She was quiet for a long time, then whispered, "I always knew something was wrong. You just look so tired all the time, Dad." That sentence broke me more profoundly than any betrayal ever could. Why failure is the key to success. But now things are different. I've started hiking again, slowly, awkwardly, my legs rediscovering freedom, even if my heart still stumbles. I joined a local photography class despite being the only man there, and met people who asked about me, Arwen, not who I was married to. I even started journaling, nothing grand, just private notes, pages filled with thoughts I'd been too afraid to voice for 20 years. Last week, I finally looked in the mirror and didn't see wallpaper. I saw Ethan, not a husband, not a ghost, just a man, flawed, healing, free. And if you've read this far, I want to tell you this. You can survive the collapse. You can rebuild. You don't need closure to start walking. Sometimes disappearing is the beginning of being seen.